And hello, my name is Martin, and today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating our own paintbrush, a multi-layer paintbrush that's going to allow us to be able to use more than one texture on the landscape itself. We're going to be doing this by creating a new material and actually going into the material itself, into the blueprint, and creating a couple of boxes and some code, and then placing that into the proper area. Now we're probably going to break this up into two pieces. The first part will be we'll be putting the brush together and making it in the blueprint, and then the second part will be applying it and changing the look of it so that it looks more realistic. All right, so to go ahead and get started, what we'll need to do is we're going to go to our content browser. We're going to go to content, and we are going to go to we're going to go to the folder that we created in a couple of tutorials earlier than this, one called a_my_stuff. Now I've already got a couple of these landscape tools that I've created for other videos and for the demo for class. So I'm going to right click and create a new folder. So right click in the empty space, create a new folder. We're going to call this landscape brush, and I'm going to call mine 3 because this is the third one that I'm making. So I'm going to double click in here, and I'm going to right click again in the empty space, so I'm now inside that folder. Whoops, did not want to create one of those. Can I just right click on it and delete it? Okay. So we are in content a_my space landscape brush 3, which is the folder that we created. Inside that folder, we're going to right click, and one of the things that we can create is a material. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then we're going to call it landscape _matte, and I'm going to put a 3 behind it because this is the third one I'm making. Okay, so once we have the material made, what we want to do is double click on the material, and that will open up the editor. And I'm going to pop this all the way open so that we can actually see it without getting confused with any of the windows that are in the background. So there is obviously a lot of stuff going on here. We are only going to cover what we need to be able to make this work. And I'm going to do a very condensed version of it. I'm not going to get into a lot of explanation. I think I explained it fairly well in the class. I will give enough information so for those who are watching it for the first time, they'll be able to understand how to make it. So the first thing that we see is we see that we have a page here. It's called material. On that material, we have this bubble. This bubble is code. If we look closely in there, we have the input to certain parts of the code. So code that would make it, would give it color, would make it look metallic, might give it a bumpy surface, might make the surface brighter so that the surface actually emits a color, so that's a emissive color. And then some of the other things. The other thing we'll notice is that some of these are turned off. A lot of why those are turned off is because you actually don't have the corresponding options over here correctly for those options to be on. So you can't have something opaque that is also that has opacity to it. Opaque meaning that you can't see through it. Translucent meaning the light would be able to transfer through it. So there's different things, and we're not going to get into all of that. What we need to do is just create a multi-layer brush that's going to allow us to be able to paint our landscape. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to right click in the space over here, and we're going to type in layer blend. And what we're looking for is all the way up at the top, it's a landscape layer blend. Okay, when we bring that in, it's a pretty boring looking box. It does have an output, so you'll notice that this output eventually will go to one of the inputs over here. And all I did to do that was click and drag out. It creates a little wiggly line that I associate with a cable. And basically we are connecting. Now when we do connect this, you will see that we get a plus, like a little green. That means we are actually attaching it somewhere that this could go to. In that case, it was able to connect there, but since that option's not available for us, that's not a good option. So we can either do a Control-Z to unclick, or we can right click here and actually say break links, which would break every single link that this is connected to, or you can say break link just to where we have it connected, which would be that, and now we don't have those connected anymore. Now, this layer blend, landscape layer blend tool, this green one. The other thing I also want to make mention to is that you'll notice that now that we have two of these, we can actually see that when one is selected, that it's going to have a yellow, like a golden outline to it. And we also notice that the options in the details panel changes based on which one of these we have selected. So I'm going to go back over to the layer blend. And what we need to do is we need to create enough layers for the different materials that we're going to use. So for example, we're going to use snow, dirt, rock, grass, sand. So we need at least 5 materials. So with layer blend selected, I'm going to come over here to the details panel. I'm going to see that there is an option there for layers, and I'm going to push the plus. Plus created a new layer, so I need to create 5 of these. So 0 is the first one, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would be 5 layers. Once those have been created, we'll look over here in the layers blend, and we'll see that each one of these now has a layer, or that these layers have been added, but that the layers don't have any names that make sense. They're just called layer none. So at this point, what I want to do is be able to change those layers so that they actually have a name that makes sense for what we're going to be placing in them. Every time you see a downward arrow, just automatically assume that that means that there is a hidden menu there, or that you can collapse that menu. So if I uncollapse 0, you'll see that I have a layer there called name. So I'm going to go, or none, well, it's called name. It has none written in there. I'm going to go ahead and call this snow. And you'll see now up here that this is called layer snow. So I'm going to do the same thing for layer 1. I'm going to go ahead and open that. And this one I'm going to call rock. And we'll close that one. We'll go to layer 2. We'll call this grass. We'll go down to the next layer. We'll call this dirt. And we'll go down to the next layer and we'll call this sand. Okay, so now when we look over here, we actually have each one of those layers, and they have been named correctly. The next thing that I want to do is I want to actually create what are called texture sample boxes, and these are going to allow us to be able to bring in the textures and the materials that we're going to need to be able to use as different paintbrushes or different palettes that we can pick from. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to type in texture sample. And if I could type, it'd be so much easier. Okay, so there it is right there underneath textures. There's one called texture sample. That's what I'm going to select. And for those who are astute, we are going to need 5 of these. So let's go ahead and duplicate. So Control W is the shortcut for that. I'm going to do this, select both of them, hit Control W. That made a new copy of 2. And then I just need 1 more for the 5th. Okay, so now that I've got all of those created, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stack one on top of the other. Not because of not because it makes a difference, just so that you can see clearly how these are going to work. Okay. Now the reason why I'm leaving it up there is because I'm actually going to need 2 sets of these. But what I want to do first is go ahead and connect these sets together, and then I'm going to duplicate them. So each one of these, and also what I want to point out at this point too, even if we don't understand what each one of these boxes do at the moment, what we should be noticing is that there is a front side and a back side to each one of these boxes, front side and a back side. And what we want to do is we want to connect the front side, the back, or the output of one to the input of the other one. If this can work, what will happen, and I don't actually want that one down there. Let's break that link, and I want the top one to go down there. Okay, so if we can make this connection, we'll see that little plus sign. If we cannot make the connection, like this wouldn't make any logical sense, so the system is not going to allow you to be able to do that. So what we want to do is we want to take each one of these texture samples, we want to take the RGB, which is the red, green, blue output, and send that into the layer blend. And I'm just keeping them in order, so then that way I can just go down the way. All right, so we now have, and what a texture sample box is going to allow us to do is connect or place a texture inside there. So if I select the top box and I come over here to Material Expression Texture Base and click in there and type in, let's say, snow, I should get anything that has the name or the word snow in it. Now, I don't like doing it from here because it's very hard to see what's actually in each one of those textures. So what I like to do is I like to make that box like a small rectangular box and then actually go into my materials on the main page and look them up here. So I'm going to go back to content. I'm going to go to texture and I'm going to type in snow. And now I can see stuff a little bit with, I can see more than what I was seeing before. Now, what I'm looking for here and what I'm going to notice right away is that we have stuff that looks, snow should be patches of white and gray. We have some that look more like walls. This looks more like a rock. What I'm looking for is something that has more like a patchy, snowy feel, like these guys right here. Not this one, this one. And then the other thing that I'm noticing is that I have a lot of these what look like ultraviolet, right? Where it sort of looks purple. It's like almost kind of like if you put on 3D glasses, it would kind of stick out to you, or it might look 3D a little bit. What's happening with these is these are going to, if these are going to give us the color and give us the appearance of what snow is going to look like, what these are going to do is they are going to give us the way that light is interacting with that snow. So when snow lands on the ground or a material happens like this, it's not going to be flat and there's going to be a lot of bumpy surfaces. Those bumpy surfaces naturally will have little micro shadows that are in them. So what this is going to do, these textures are going to do, the UV ones, they're going to give us what feels like depth. It's just going to be one layer on top of another layer. They're going to both be painted in at the same time. But what's going to happen is that as light hits this layer, it'll react to those little surface bumps and it'll shine through this layer, areas that are darker or lighter. It'll make more sense once we actually see it on the floor. For what we need to do now is just pick a snow for this top one, and then and what we also want to do real quick before we get started is we're actually going to make a duplicate copy of this. So I'm going to select this right here. I'm going to hit Control W, as we learned that is the shortcut key. I'm going to make a secondary copy of this and I'm going to bring it down here to the bottom. Okay. Now with each one of these layer blends, the first one is going to go to color and the second one is going to go to normal. Now the color is, like I said, is going to be what we see. It's going to be the areas of white, blue, gray that make up the snow. And then in the bottom one right here, this one actually copied over when I made the duplication. So with this one, I'm going to grab that UV texture and I'm going to drop that one into this box. Okay, so then we have what the snow is going to look like as far as its color, and then how that snow is going to interact with light. Okay, so the next one that we're going to create is I believe it's the rock. Yep, it's the rock. So let's go ahead and grab rock. Okay. Now, somebody asked me a while back, where am I getting all these from? These are coming from the packs that I've downloaded offline from the Unreal Engine. So you're more than welcome to go through those packs and try to find stuff that's going to work for you. I obviously have quite a few because I've downloaded lots of them over the years. Let's see. It's a good looking rock. Let's go with that one. Okay, so that's the one that we're going to use for there. And then we're going to go pick one of these ultraviolet looking ones. Oops. Okay. And I almost made a mistake. So I still have the box up there selected. You always want to select the box that you're going to be dropping this into and then drop it in. Otherwise, you'll replace the ones that were up there. So from there, we're going to go click the texture sample box, and we're going to now type in, let's say, grass. Okay, I like this one. Okay, we're going to come down here to the bottom, select the one that would be attached to grass, look for an ultraviolet one, and then put it there. From here, we're going to go now dirt. I'm only really liking this one. Come on. So select the texture, grab the box, drop it in there, and then grab one for the UV. Select the texture box, grab the UV one, drop it into texture, and then they'll show up there. And then all we need is the last one for sand. So okay. I don't know, we'll go with that one. And then the same thing, we need a UV one. Select the box, grab the texture, drop it in. Okay, so at this point we have 5 texture sample box that are going to give us colors, 5 sample texture box that are going to be moving around and messing around with the light and reflecting light slightly different. Now from here we still need 2 more boxes. So we're going to come over here to the area next to this, and we're going to type in landscape coordinates. Okay, so there it is, landscape layer coordinates. And when this comes in, it should have like a little bit of a rainbow sheen to it. There we go. So more like Christmas colors, red and green. But, you know, more colorful than the other boxes. Now, what we need to do is we need to connect the output of this to the inputs of each one of the UVs. Again, it's not super important to know what each one of the options mean or exactly what UV or all of these particular things mean at the moment. More of that will become apparent as you do, you know, we can write whole books on you know, creating materials. So at this point we just want to get this one material working and have a little bit of experience connecting boxes, running our first blueprint. Okay, so that's one of them. And then the last box that we're going to need is actually, we're going to make the surface not smooth. So we want a little bit of a bumpiness to the surface. So that's going to come in roughness. And, you know, we can write some pretty crazy stuff there for roughness. But what we want is a consistent roughness. So consistent. And we'll get this really boring little green box. If we click on it, we come over here, we see that we get a value. Remember, this is consistent. So it's going to always be a value of 1, and we're going to click that and put that into roughness. Okay, so just to understand the logic of what we're doing here, what we're saying is this box is saying landscape coordinates. So wherever we put down our brush, we have now these 5 layers that we're going to paint onto these coordinates, the one that's been picked. And then from there, that layer will be blended with all the other layers, the snow, the rock, the grass. This is the one that's going to allow us to be able to not necessarily select. Well, it does give us the option to select, but it also is creating a blend between those. And then we have the top set, as we explained, which are the colors, and the bottom set, which is how light is going to reflect or be dealt with to create shadows in those textures. The consistent is to create a little bit of a bumping surface to it. And then from there we have the landscape tool itself, or the material itself. So this material has layers that have different textures in them that can be placed based on where the coordinate is, or where we put our paintbrush for the coordinates. So at this point, this is ready. We'll be able to use it. The only thing we want to do before we leave is hit apply and save. Okay. Otherwise, these changes may or may not show up when we place the material. Okay, so at this point, that is the end of this video. Like I said, I'm going to try to keep the video short, so then that way you don't have to suffer through a 30-40 minute video to learn how to paint a landscape. So this first video was on how to create the brush, or the tool that we're going to use, the material, and in the next video we'll actually start applying it and mess around with some of the settings for it to make it look more photorealistic. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.